what exists in your mind is so much scarier than what when you see something. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm chatting with Marc Klasfeld, the director of Do Not Enter, which is just so much fun. I mean, I love a good thriller, and this has got the horror thriller elements pumping from the beginning. And I know the film is based on a book. I think it's David Morrell's Creepers. But what
Yeah.
excited you to tell this story?
Well, it's based on a book, but it's there's certain elements that are similar. There's certain elements that are different. David Morrell also wrote First Blood, which the first Rambo movie was based off of, and First Blood is one of my all-time favorites. But but again, the script is different than the book. Certain elements are the same, but the thing that attracted me to it's a horror movie, like you said, but it also has adventure in it, and you said fun, and it really brought the fun element to me to this. And it was just so entertaining, and that's what really attracted me to it.
I appreciate that because there is an energy to this. I mean, yes, it has those moments of intensity, but there is that. I like the word adventure to it because there is a bit of that with these characters, and as they set out, almost Indiana Jones-esque within a hotel,
Yes.
if you will.
Yeah, definitely Indiana Jones. I mean, that was definitely a big influence, without giving anything away. Like the whole opening sequence, it's a kind of like a separate adventure. Urban exploring is an adventurous thing. So, it was equal parts horror and equal parts adventure. So I really enjoyed that part of the script.
I'm not sure if I hope I'm not giving anything away about this, but the beastie in this
Yeah.
particular, to not put too fine a point, has a unique look, and I was wondering what inspired that particular look because it feels different, even though it feels so relatable or familiar at the same time.
That's great. That's definitely what we intended. So when I was creating the creature, I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do it, but I was Googling around and I found this wonderful actor named Javier Botet. And Javier has done a lot of different creature roles. And when you see him, there's nobody who looks like this man. He has a very unique look. And when I was just so inspired by his look. And then when you get to talk to him, he's just the total opposite of all these evil creatures he plays. He's just the warmest, sweetest, most human, good-hearted man. And the creature kind of has two sides to it. It's got like the human side and where it starts, and he was able to bring out both of those sides, but he was definitely a big inspiration.
Thank God you said he's different than the character he portrays. That would be an interesting production meeting, I
Yeah,
guess, if it
yeah.
was
No,
not.
he's a sweet, sweet guy.
Honestly, it's a fun film. But one of the things I thought was really interesting about this film is its conversation about being relevant. And I don't mean like a relevant conversation, but we see these characters and they're struggling to make it as often all of us on the internet are trying to do. But the film sort of taps into this idea of wanting to become more. More is a word that comes up more than once, no pun intended. I was wondering why that was interesting for you to explore and what it says about us in your mind.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely well, thank you for noticing that. And that was de there's definitely some, on top of, the horror and the adventure, there's definitely some social media commentary, some societal commentary that I think you're picking up on about, you know, wanting to be famous, wanting to be known, getting views, getting hits, all those things that are, so common in our society now. And how that happens and what that feels like. So yeah, there's definitely a little bit of social commentary there.
I wondered in light of that, the idea of the code, whether or not the code in your mind, the power of having a code for these sorts of, not just for these characters, but in the midst of this push to for more if the code sort of helps with that?
Well, I mean, I think it's, the code is sort of like cred. And, I think if you give up your cred, you, you can lose viewers or lose following. So there's an interesting, it's like you can't just quite chase fame. You have to come up with, you have to give people a reason to like you or to want to watch you, and so yeah, there is that kind of like that you know argument playing out within the movie, within everything else we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, one of the things wanted to go back, we talked a little bit about before adventure and this idea and the influences on some of the scenes in this film. But
Yeah.
for you, as you're developing some of these sequences, and I don't want to say too much. I know the dumbwaiter I thought was just a fabulous scene, in particular. But what do you think you need, and what goes into developing one of these to build the intensity of an action scene like that?
um well, I mean, I think, I once, when I was first starting, I saw Francis Coppola on a show, and he said, good directors borrow, great directors steal. And I think you have to be incredibly, I think you have to be incredibly well referenced, right? There's
Mm.
nothing new under the sun. There's absolutely nothing new under the sun. And, YouTube and social media is great at that, right? They show you where things come from. But I mean, that we're all standing on the shoulders of somebody else, and we're, and I'm, I love movies. I've, all I do is watch movies. I've always watched movies, and I love, reading books. And when you just build up all of these great references in your head, and you just sort of combine them all together, and make your own thing. And I think the challenge is like you never want to steal outright, right? You never want to do it. I mean, I guess sometimes it can happen, but you want to take, but you want to kind of make it your own thing. And I think that's where the balance lies.
Yeah, I guess you never really want to have the boulder running down exactly, but you want it to feel like we did when we saw Indy running front and that boulder is running behind him.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
but they
saying?
took all, they took all those things, from, all of the Alan Quartermain and all those like
That's right.
19, 40s like serials. Not to get too off the beaten path, but there's actually like I think they recorded their conversation, not or somebody like typed out the conversation that Lucas, Spielberg, and Kasdan had when they were writing Indiana Jones. It's just fascinating because it's like a couple hours to read, but that boulder sequence, like they were just spitballing ideas, and some things never ended up in the film. But I think that was Spielberg just spitballed that idea, and how it became iconic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, Do Not Enter has that feel and element. In addition to, it's an interesting mix of adventure and horror
Yeah,
at the same time. I love the blend between the two.
thank you.
Having said that, I know we're running out of time, but this is such a unique film in some ways, and I just wondered, for you as director, what scares you?
In a movie or in real life or
However you want to answer that.
I'll tell you, I'll tell you. Um, One thing I tried to do in the movie was not to show the creature a lot, and I think what exists in your mind is so much scarier than what when you see something. And the absolute master of that is Steven Spielberg. And when I saw, I was unfortunately my parents thought it was a good idea to take me to Jaws when I was too young to see it. And not seeing, I know it happened on accident. I don't think they intended to do that, but not seeing the shark was just the scariest thing ever, because what exists in your brain is so much scarier than just seeing something. And I love when movies do that. And Jaws, I don't know if it was the first one to do that, but it's certainly like the most well-known one to do that. And even to this day, when I go into a swimming pool, I still think that there's a shark in the swimming pool. If I close I can't close my eyes. To this day, that's how much effect that movie had on me. I think it was the 50th year anniversary last year or something. I went
Yeah.
to see it again. Not that I haven't seen it 100 times, but like I saw it on the big screen and it still works, man. It's still scary as shit.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I think that's just one of those films I think that taps into every element of fear that we have.
Yeah.
Um, and well, just when you're safe to go back into the abandoned hotel, comes Do Not Enter. And honestly, Mark, it's a joy to chat with you. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. And like I said, Do Not Enter is just so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Oh, so kind. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for chatting. Have a great day.
All right, you too.
Thanks. Bye bye.